Hey everybody, I wanted to take some time today to talk about a form that the VA wants veterans to fill out when there is a potential for total disability based on individual unemployability, or TDIU. Now, I've spoken about TDIU in other videos, and I'm sure there's plenty of other videos on YouTube discussing TDIU, but as a refresher, TDIU, or IU for short, is when a veteran has service-connected conditions that result in them being completely unemployable. And the VA kind of acknowledges here that sometimes the math just doesn't add up, right? Because as you know, you don't just add your aggregate disability evaluations together to get a number, and you may have 15, 10% ratings, but you're still not at 100%. So the math doesn't always make sense and don't always paint the full picture of what a person's going through and whether or not they are employable. TDIU kicks in can kick in when service-connected conditions render somebody unable to maintain substantial gainful employment. And what this means is there's an economic threshold. It's in 2024, it's like $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 a year. Don't remember the exact number. It doesn't really matter for this purpose. For a veteran to be considered for it, there has to be evidence that they are unemployable, and they have to meet a rating criteria. They either have to have a 70% rating combined, with one of the ratings making up that total rating being at 40%, or have at least one rating that is at 60%. It gets a little complicated, but bottom line is total disability for individual employability comes into play when someone has a service-connected or multiple service-connected conditions that result in them being unable to gain or maintain substantial gainful employment. So let's talk about the 8940. Now, the VA wants this form because they need to do a little bit of employee verification and kind of get a little bit more information about a veteran's work history. So let's talk about it piece by piece. Section 1 is pretty simple. It is your biographical information, or the veteran's biographical information. Your name, address, email, phone number, etc. Simple stuff. Section 2 talks about the disabilities and the treatments. Now, these are the service-connected disabilities that are causing the veteran to be unable to gain or maintain substantial gainful employment, as well as where the person or veteran is being treated for them. So again, if you have a disability that is not service-connected or unrelated to your military service entirely, that's not something you need to put on the form, or even should put on the form. This is just for service-connected disabilities. Employment statement. This is section 3, blocks 14. Date your disability affected your full-time employment. So this isn't the day you stopped working, but this is the day approximately that it became almost impossible for you to work. Maybe you started missing more work. You started having absenteeism at work, and the disability was so bad that it was affecting your job performance. The date you last worked full time is just that, the date that you stopped working full time. And then the date you became too disabled to work, if that's different than the date you stopped working full time, is of course just that. What was the date approximately that you became too disabled to work? 17, what's the most you've ever made and in what year? And what occupation did you hold in that year for blocks 17A, 17B, and 17C? Now, page 2, section 3 is continued. And again, just as a reminder, you can put your social security number at the top. You want to put your social security number on top of all the forms. This is going to look at a work history, okay? And military duties, and you want to go in reverse chronological order. Simple. The name and the address of the employer, the dates you were employed, the time you lost, the number of days you lost because of your disability, the type of work you were doing, the hours you were working, and the highest gross earnings per month. And you just go down and you fill out as much as that as you can. And again, these dates can be approximate. If you don't remember the exact date of a job you left 5 years ago, that's fine. If you remember the month and date, that's fine. Get as close as you can. Moving on to the third page, section 3 is continued. Asks very simple questions. What's the most you've earned in the last 12 months? And what's your current monthly earnings if you're working? As well as whether or not you're currently on active duty. Next couple questions. Why'd you leave your last job? Do you expect to receive disability or retirement income? Or workers' compensation benefits. Again, these are just things that you want to complete if you think that if they apply to you. Now, if you've tried to get some work, if you've tried to find a job since then, that's where you start listing in blocks 22 then name the places you've applied to. Section 4 is the schooling and other training. They want to know about your job, about your education levels. Pretty simple stuff. And on block 5 are the remarks. So if anywhere along the way there was a yes or no question that called for additional explanation, this is where you want to fill it out. Also, if there's anything that you thought might require information elsewhere on the form, you might want to fill that out too. So if your last full-time job was driving for a rideshare company and your gross was $3,000 a month, but after fuel and maintenance on the car, you only made $750 that month, well, note that as well, because that is, quite frankly, important information. Then, of course, you date and sign. Now, what's going to happen next? After you submit this form, the VA is going to send out letters to the employers that you listed on there and just verify employment. Now, of course, ideally, the VA would love it if your employer said, oh yeah, he quit because, or she quit because their disabilities became too much to accommodate. But more often than not, they're just looking for employer verification that you actually left that job, that you worked there for a certain period of time, what you were earning, so on and so forth. Technically, the VA doesn't really need this form, but the M21 manual states that if you are seeking this benefit, TDIU, you need to complete this form so the VA has the adequate information to make that assessment. With that in mind, there's other information that may come into play from other C&P exams, from other pieces of evidence. And again, TDIU itself, not a claim. The VA is supposed to automatically consider it anytime that they have evidence that you're unemployed and that your service-connected conditions resulted in that unemployment. That said, I hope this was a decent explainer of how to complete this form. It can be a little bit complicated, a little bit daunting, but that's the basics on how to complete the VA 8940. Until next time, take care.